first, thanks for sitting with me and having a conversation. I wouldn't say I was intimidated. I certainly wasn't expecting to have the opportunity to follow in John's footsteps. I felt very confident going down to D.C. around the issues because I perceived it as sort of doing work on the same issues I've been working on in the governor's office, just from the federal side. I was, to the extent anything intimidated me, was the possibility of sort of learning all the ins and outs and the peculiarities of the Senate itself. But that's why I asked John's staff to stick around and help me out, and they were kind enough to do so. Yeah, there are quite a few, I imagine. I mean, I tell this story. When you come to the Senate, everybody gets a desk, and inside that desk is a single drawer, and there are two beautifully bound volumes with your name inscribed on them, and they contain all the rules and procedures I guess one is supposed to know as a senator. But my joke is you can look at any desk, and all the books are in the same condition because no one ever opens them, because all the rules that matter aren't going to be found in those books. They're shared through staff and experience over time. And so there was much I needed to learn about understanding the business of the Senate, the ins and outs. Most people don't know, for example, how voting works in the Senate. And I didn't know. One thing I didn't know until I got there was we don't spend a whole lot of time on the Senate floor itself. We come to the floor en masse for voting purposes, where we're usually all gathered around the front of the room in a scrum, and we just wait to catch the eye of the clerk and say, up or down. Also, I didn't realize that freshman senators, as a form of, shall we say, orientation, serve as the presiding officer when the Senate's in session. So as a member of the freshman class, for 3 hours a week, I sat in the presiding officer's chair and I oversaw the Senate. And you control the Senate for the time you're in the chair. Of course, you can't leave that chair for any reason. So best advice is don't drink a whole lot of water before you take the chair. Well, this is as good a time as any to tell everyone that Deval Patrick is my father. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Listen, the governor and I have known each other for many years. I met him when I was a relatively young lawyer out of law school a decade and a half ago. And as everyone now knows, I began working with him about 4 years ago as chief legal counsel and eventually chief of staff. And I think I know the governor felt confident that I was going to go to Washington, D.C., understand the issues as they impacted folks back here in the Commonwealth. And he knew, having worked closely with me, how I was going to comport myself during his interim service, and felt confident that I would represent the Commonwealth and myself and himself well. In matters like this, when the governor has a heady and important choice like this, it should be no surprise to all that he wants to place his trust in someone he knows well to do the job well. And I was pleased and honored, yet surprised nonetheless, that he selected me. Well, you say again, and I'll point out I've never run for elected office. I would say to those listening or watching this video, if you want to serve in the Senate, try to do it the way I did it. No elections, no fundraisers of any sort. Listen, I was privileged and honored to serve in the Senate, and I really, really did enjoy it. I mean, some people find that hard to believe given what they see on television about the behavior and the business of Congress, but I had a great time, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to serve the people of Massachusetts. And I came to love the job. Let me be clear about that. I loved being a senator. I loved the work. I loved the people. I loved the give and take, the back and forth among my colleagues. I loved it. But as much as I loved the job, I never really developed a taste for the application process. Campaigns are important. They're vital to our democracy. But I do not see myself at this juncture in my life as a candidate. I greatly respect those who choose to do so, and we always need good people to do it. People who think that they may not be good candidates often are the best candidates. So I encourage anyone who's thinking about it to do it. But as is the case with me, it's a deeply personal choice, and there are a whole lot of factors. And certainly this is not the time in my life to run for office. But as I tell other people all the time, who knows what the future holds? But I don't see elected office in my future just yet. But then again, 8 months ago, I never saw myself as a U.S. Senator. Stranger things happen. Oh, simply as Mo. Simply as Mo. I have not grown accustomed to, and perhaps never will fully grow accustomed to, the moniker and the title of senator. And I have found myself in some rather embarrassing situations when I hear someone calling for senator, and not realizing they're addressing me. And of course, I'm thinking, who from the Senate's here today? But listen, to most folks, I am Mo. As I said in my final remarks on the Senate floor, I'll have the title for as long as I'm, traveling this mortal coil. But I think it's important to relate to people. And if you're in public office and you're doing public service, sometimes titles get in the way of the important work of connecting to real people. DC in particular is often described as being a bubble. And it is true. And I think part of what we're witnessing now, what troubles us all, is that too many of our elected officials are disconnected from the people who hired them to do the job. And so titles are great. And I respect anyone certainly who's held the title of senator or congressman, if the case may be. But at the end of the day, you're Mo, you're Joe, you're Elizabeth, you're Ed, right? And when you remember that, you remember not only where you came from, but why you are where you are and who you work for, and that's what matters. In politics today, well, politicians aren't very popular these days. If you're asking me who's the living politician I look up to, perhaps my answer is far too obvious. It's Deval Patrick. And the reasons are the same reasons I think most people would select Deval. Someone like he's a man of principle, and he ran on those principles. He's tried to govern by them, and he stood by them, but not so. But he's not an entrenched ideologue. He recognizes that to govern effectively, you have to govern not only for those who voted for you, but you have to govern just as hard for the people who voted against you. And there's not enough of that attitude right now. Too many people are worried about appeasing only the people who cast ballots for them. The reality is, if you are fortunate enough to be elected to office, you must govern for everybody, whether they were for you or against you. And so I'm drawn, and I take inspiration from people like that in political life, if you will, elected officials. But beyond that, the people who really inspire me in politics are the people who volunteer for campaigns because they believe in a candidate or an issue, and they give countless hours, resources, and energy for a cause. And then those staff members who toil away, often facelessly and namelessly, while the senator or congresswoman is on the House floor or the Senate floor. The people back in those offices who are digging deep, doing serious, significant analysis, and helping shape the policy that should move the country forward. That's what inspired me. I met some impressive senators and Congress members when I was in D.C., but the number of impressive staff members, young people of all ages, stripes, ethnicities, most of whom could be doing anything, but choose to dedicate their intellectual capacity and energy and effort to working with members of Congress to move this country forward. That's inspiring. Well, you got to be known for something, right? I suppose. There's really sadly, there's no adventurous tale that leads me to the choice of my haberdashery choice. It's simply, as a lawyer, someone who spent most of his career in suits before I got into public office. I always felt a desire to distinguish myself from every other dark blue or gray suit in the room. And I found an easy and affordable way to do that was through my choice of neckwear, the traditional long neckties, of which I had about 150 at that point. But then that grew a little weary for me, and there was a very senior partner in my law firm who wore bow ties, and I admired him greatly, not just for his bow ties, but for his approach to the practice and his commitment to the community and the way he conducted himself. And sort of as an homage to him, I began to wear a bow tie. And then it's one of those things where not many people, at least for a time, were wearing these things. And, I like being different every once in a while. And so I think a bow tie makes anyone look distinguished for a little while. And so I encourage all of you to get on the bow tie bandwagon. It's here to stay.
There you go.
Join the revolution.
May I just say you've certainly distinguished yourself beyond your apparel. Thank you very much. Thank you for your service to our country, and best of luck in the future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation. Take care.